Next, I would like to call Brother Shedou to the mic. Professionally, Brother Shedou has a Bachelor of Science in French Language and Literature and is currently employed as an IT business analyst for a Fortune 50 company. In his spare time, Brother Shedou translates the books of Mawlana Faizani into Arabic. Today, Brother Shedou will give a timely speech on the authentic spiritual foods for the journey of life. Dear Brother Shedou, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, dear Mariam. Can everyone hear me? Great. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Be happy. I'm very happy to be here today, listening to hours of spiritual food that all the speakers have been delivering to us. The speakers actually have set the bar too high for me, so I hope I will be able to add a little value to the conversation today. I would like to elaborate on the topic of spiritual food. So our previous speakers have actually spoken about the soul, foods of the soul, and all that. I would like to expand a little bit on the topic of spiritual food. But let's start with something that we're all familiar with, which is our body, our physical body, and the food that we give to our bodies. So for example, the human body is similar in many ways among all humans. However, our body is different from, for example, animals and other creatures on Earth. So the point is, for example, our food is also different. So for example, a lion can eat raw meat, we cannot eat raw meat and all that. So our food is very unique as human beings. So Mawlana Faizani also explains that our human soul is far superior than the soul of other creatures on Earth. So that's where we need to think about the types of food that are specific to our soul as well. So again, let's look again at our physical body. The body of human beings is very similar at its basis. However, the body of an athlete, for example, is very different than the body of an unhealthy person or an obese person. So why is that? It's because the athlete pays a lot of attention to the types of food that they eat, how they replenish the energy of their bodies. So food, speaking of spiritual healing, to our physical body, food can actually make us sick or healthy. Similarly, there are spiritual foods that would make our soul healthy, strong, and there are other types of foods, for example, foods of the ego, that would actually weaken us. So exactly the way physical food works, spiritual food works also the same way. So Mawlana Faizani states that that our soul can actually be nourished and healed the way our body can be nourished and healed by the physical food that we have on Earth. Mawlana Faizani also specifies that there are three types of soul. There is the animal soul. This is the type of soul that degrades, when we don't feel our spirituality, the proper food, our soul can degrade to a lower state of spirituality, this is manifested in people that do evil, that harm others, and so on. And then he says there is another level of the soul, which is the human soul. And this is people that mix good and bad. People that do good deeds sometimes, and other times they do bad deeds. So it's a mix of good and bad. The third type of soul Mawlana Faizani speaks of is the Jan soul. This is the perfect human soul. So this Jan soul is attainable to all of us. It's not something that's specific to people that have specific abilities. The soul is the same for all humans, and we all have the potential of achieving this type of superior and perfect soul. However, in order to achieve that type of soul, we have to give our spirituality the proper type of nutrition. So where can we see manifestations of the type of the perfect soul, for example? Muslims grow up hearing the stories of the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and we're always amazed that they were spiritually strong. They sacrificed everything they had for the truth that they believed in. Not only that, there are actually stories of even some supernatural abilities that the companions of the Prophet demonstrated, and actually these stories are narrated. For example, Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of the great Sahaba, it was reported that at some point he spoke to one of his military leaders who who was hundreds of miles away. And that person heard him. And when he came back to the Medina where Omar was, he said, I heard the voice of Omar telling me that and that. And there are many examples actually in the life of the Sahaba that demonstrates this powerful human state. So Mawlana Faizani explains the mystery behind this. Why is it that these Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, were able to achieve such strength and such influence thanks to their character and soul? Mawlana Faizani says it's really the power of the human soul. This human soul is a treasure of God. As I said earlier, the human soul is superior to, for example, the souls of animals, and really superior to the soul of any other creature on earth. Mawlana Faizani actually explains that animals have souls, even trees have souls, but our human soul that Allah breathed into the وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, as the Quran says, it has a very powerful and unique makeup and therefore potential as well. So Mawlana Faizani says that since we all have this potential, this treasure, which is the soul, we can all achieve a state close to the Sahaba. I mean, he gives us good news, because most Muslims think that it's impossible for us now to be like the Sahaba, right? They were just amazing people, and we have no way of reaching their highest. But actually, Mawlana Faizani says even Muslims of today can achieve a similar state of perfection to the Sahaba. How? Because the secret is, he gives us the secret, which is there is a soul. This soul is like our physical body. It needs food. If you give it the proper food, nutrition, it will grow. The more your soul grows, the more you will have and demonstrate these qualities that the Sahaba, peace be upon them, demonstrated in their lives. So Mawlana Faizani actually gives us the recipe. He gives us in his books what are the types of food that our spirit needs, that our soul needs. And he states that the first type is actually the conditional worship. These are all the pillars of Islam that all Muslims grow up learning. But here there is a slightly different angle that we can look at these rituals, with Mawlana Faizani's teachings. So, for example, if we look quickly at the 5 pillars of Islam, first there's the Shahada. You say, you witness that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. So the Shahada is an act of the mind and the heart and the tongue. So that's the first pillar of Islam. Then comes the prayer. The prayer is all that in addition to your body is doing some action. So your tongue is engaged, your mind is engaged, your heart is engaged, but now your body is also being engaged. So you're standing, you're sitting, and all that. Then comes zakat, which is the charity. So every person is obligated, if you have surplus, to give to other people, to the needy people. So now you're going out of your own body and you're actually giving out of your own money to others. Then comes fasting, and fasting is also instead of it's not an action, it's now abstinence. You're not doing something, you're actually refraining from many things, and of course there are a lot of details. And then lastly, there's the Hajj, the pilgrimage, which is really it encompasses all that. But now you're being pushed to actually not only do something or give money, you're actually traveling far away from your own land. So with this understanding, we realize that all these rituals of Islam are not just rituals that we have to do it because it's an obligation, and we get bored from it, and we know how sometimes as Muslims we suffer from this. Mawlana Faizani is saying these rituals, they are not just rituals. There is a purpose of all that. What do they do to you? They feed your soul. So now when you pray, when you do charity, when you do all of these rituals, think that they are not just actions that you do. You are actually giving your soul food. The more nourishment you give to your soul, the more powerful your soul will become. Then Mawlana Faizani goes on and explains that there are an unconditional food, which is unconditional worship, and he actually emphasizes 2 very important types of food, and previous speakers have also mentioned that. So he mentioned the Dhikr, which is similar to in other spiritual traditions to mantras, for example. When you focus on some words that have a meaning and you keep repeating them. So he explains that these things are not just words. They actually feed your soul. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is tafakkur, which is contemplation. And that's an amazing, actually, for me, it's amazing that Mawlana Faizani, he focuses so much on the contemplation in the universe, in the world, in the creation. And he says, this is the actually shortest path of the human being to his Lord, which is a little bit unique because a lot of Muslim scholars focus on prayer and all the good things that we mentioned earlier. But Mawlana Faizani says, well, you know what? Contemplation using your intellect is actually, it takes you faster to Allah. And it's based on the hadith of the Prophet, because the Prophet ﷺ said that 1 minute of worship, and in other narrations, 1 hour of actually contemplation is equal to 60, or is better to 60 years of worship rituals. So Mawlana Faizani is putting a lot of emphasis on that. And that's also interesting because in our times, Allah made this practice very easy. If you look at all the scientific resources that we have now, you know, how easy it is now to like open Netflix or YouTube and find a documentary, for example, that shows you how the galaxies are and, you know, how the animal kingdom operates. So all these are actually now foods for the soul. According to Mawlana Faizani, if you look at all these all these scientific findings, but if you connect all that to Almighty Allah, then you actually are giving your food the superfood, you know, because we know there are different types of food. There is good food, there is superfood. So contemplation is the superfood of the soul. Then he goes on also and explains that we're kind of more visible types of food, but there are even invisible types of food that also nourish our soul. So things like humbleness, you know, when you see a person who's humble, most people, no one likes arrogant people, for example. So this is really a good human characteristic, and it is a manifestation of a good, well-nourished soul. Thanksgiving, you know, being grateful to Allah, being grateful to everything that we have. This is also nourishment for the soul. Trust in Allah, tawakkul, you know, as we say, you know, not panicking, knowing that Allah is by your side. All these are feelings, even though they're inner feelings. No one can see it. No one can see your thankfulness. No one can see all these states, patience, for example. It's all inner, but these are also food for the soul. And, you know, other things we can go on, but we can also just mention that the sins, what we call sins in Islam, why they are bad? Because they deplete your soul. So that's also a very unique way of looking at sins, because sometimes also we look at sins and we say, oh, okay, this is a bad deed, but what does it really mean? What does it do to your spiritual being? What these bad deeds do is that they deplete your soul, as if you are, for example, eating poison or eating some toxic food that will make your body sick. So abstaining from all these things, for example, you know, respecting the rights of people, not doing harm to anyone, all these things, if you refrain from them, that means you are saving your soul from poison that will make it weaker. And I would like to read actually 3 short sentences that Mawlana Faizani calls our tradition, and that will show us, you know, how Mawlana Faizani puts the nourishment of the soul in 3 directions to his school, to his students. If you do these 3 things, then you are a follower of the school, and therefore you are also feeding your soul. So let's look at them. So the first thing is, all kinds of goodness accomplished toward ensuring peace for God's creatures, merely for Allah's sake, is our tradition. Second thing, all efforts endeavor towards society's development is our way. Third thing, physical, financial, or verbal beneficence and assistance done anywhere to anyone, regardless of religion or creed, for the pleasure of Allah, without any ulterior motives, is our tradition. So all these, this tradition that Mawlana Faizani lays down for his students is a way of feeding your soul as well. And this is really, no one can argue that these are all good good things. No matter what religion you are, if someone sees you living by these values, they will respect you, they will appreciate you, because as a human being, you are adding value to life, and you're not really harming, other human beings and other creatures. But there is even more good news. So as believers, we believe that after death, our souls will continue to live on. We don't believe that death is the end of life. And there's amazing good news that actually Mawlana Faizani explains, and it's based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, whereas he says that we can keep feeding our soul even after our death. There are ways that you can do. Now we're, for example, our body, once we die, our body goes back to the ground. There is no way to feed our body. Once we die, also, we know that, our actions stop. We cannot do any more actions. But there are three things that if we do, they will keep feeding our soul even after our die. And our soul will keep getting stronger and more powerful. And these are beneficial knowledge. If you write a good book, you say a good speech, and people after you die, they benefit from it, you get rewarded. That means what? What does reward mean? Reward means your soul gets more nourished. And of course, knowledge, that the Prophet didn't even say what type of knowledge. Any knowledge that benefits people will keep feeding your soul after you die. And remaining charity, meaning someone establishes a non-profit, for example. Someone establishes like an orphanage. Any charity that remains after you die and people benefit from it, that also keeps feeding your soul. And pious descendants, you have kids and you raise them, you teach them well, and you help them become healthy human beings spiritually and physically. This also, as long as they live and do good deeds, all this will help your soul after you die. See, these are all very good news that we can feed our soul, forever, basically. And then speaking of the soul, our other speakers also mentioned the cooperators of the soul. So I want to focus on that also, and let's think about our physical body and compare that to the soul. So our physical body needs nutrition, needs good exercise. So you can have people in your life that will help you do the things that will make your body healthier. For example, you can have a coach that will train you. You can have friends that exercise, and they invite you to exercise with them. They eat healthy food. So when you go to a restaurant, for example, these friends will encourage you to eat the good food, not to avoid the junk food. And so all these people help you become healthier. They are cooperators of your healthy body. Similarly, Mawlana Faizani explains that there are also spiritual cooperators of the soul. There are people and entities that will actually help you become healthier spiritually. One of them is a metaphysical entity, which is the angel. As we know, all believers in Abrahamic religions believe in angels. But what you can think of your angel as your personal spiritual trainer. The way you have a trainer for your body, if you strengthen your soul, the more you feed your soul, the more receptive you become to your angel's voice. So you have a like 24-hour personal spiritual trainer at your side at all times. So the more you feed your soul, the more you connect with this personal trainer, spiritual trainer, and you benefit from its wisdom and its good direction that it gives to you. And who else is a cooperator of your soul? All the good people in your life, teachers, the spiritual teachers, the scholars, even a good friend that would tell you, encourage you to do a good deed, for example. All these are cooperators of the soul. They help your soul become stronger. And then let me conclude by something that actually other speakers also mentioned, but we want to look at it from also like comparison between our physical body and our soul. So as we know, when we are hungry, we feel that we want to eat. We feel thirsty, we feel hungry. That's a signal that our body gives to us that our body needs replenishment. It needs food to get energy to be able to continue, our daily lives. So Mawlana Faizani also explains something that's, I think it's very important to remember. He explains that the way there are signs or signals of the hunger of your body, there are also signals of the hunger of your soul. These signals will tell you that your soul is malnourished. It needs replenishment. So what are these signals? They are actually signals that a lot of people mistake it for other things. So these signals are depression, anger, snapping at people. These things that discomfort, all kinds of internal discomfort. Mawlana Faizani explains that in reality, they are the cry of the soul. Your soul is hungry, and it's doing pressure on you to kind of wake you up because it needs its spiritual food. But then the devil, our sworn enemy, he actually knows these signals better than most people do. He understands, or the devil understands, that these are your soul is trying to push you to do something to feed it. But then the devil will tell you, you know what? It's actually, you need a better car. If you get that job, you'll be happy. If you get that house, you'll be happy. So it tries to distract you from the real source of this discomfort, and it's telling you to accumulate, material things. But in reality, it's your soul's hunger. And just to give an example, let's say you're hungry, and instead of eating, you go and buy, for example, a nice watch or buy something physical. Would that ever satisfy your hunger? No matter how, let's say you buy $1 million object, but you're hungry. That's not going to do you any good. Your body needs nutrition. It needs food. Same thing for the soul. So with this understanding, we realize that our soul needs this food. These are the signals. If we feel, let's focus on what we're missing spiritually, what we need spiritually. And I think I will conclude here, but let me finish by saying something. Today I had breakfast. I'm sure after this conference I will eat something. I will feed my body. I'm sure that everyone had some water, had some drinks, had some juice, had some food. We don't let a day, one single day, go by without feeding our body. I think everyone agrees, unless people are in a famine or they have no access to food, and unfortunately we will see the result of that. Their body will become weak, they will have no energy. So my message is, today we will continue our lives, we will eat every day. Remember that you have a spiritual entity, you have a spiritual body, which is your soul, that also needs food and needs replenishment. So the way you don't let a day pass by without feeding your body, also we shouldn't let one day go by without feeding our soul. And that's it. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And I'll pass the mic back to our wonderful MC, Mariam. Thank you so much.